I want to introduce my friend, Susan Ono, who is a clinical psychologist with over 20 years of experience working with diverse multicultural populations, providing clinical supervision training for psychology, social work, and MFT interns in community mental health settings. At the heart of her therapeutic work is the centrality of relationships. She specializes in treating anxiety, depression, trauma, life transitions, parenting issues, and grief and loss. Susan is trained in a variety of modalities, including cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, mindfulness, narrative therapy, trauma recovery, and functional family therapy. Susan works from the foundation that people are the experts of their own lives. Her approach is collaborative, strength-based, and grounded in cultural humility. And I can say what appreciation I have for Susan. She and I in the past have done parenting groups together, moms groups together, and it's just been a delight to be your colleague, Susan. So thank you so much for being here today, and we appreciate you sharing your good work with us. So I'll let you take it from here. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that intro, Beth, and thank you all for joining us today. It's nice to see some familiar faces and names. I want to give a shout out to Oakland and Alameda Head Start for representing. Thanks for being here. I know it's a busy pre-service time for you all. Yeah, and as Leah had shared, keeping your cameras on would be my preference, just to see how this material is landing for you all. I know I learn best from being in relationship with others. And so really wanting you to participate as much as you can, to hear your voices in the chat, to ask questions, and have this be as interactive as possible. It's my hope. All right.
And I'll be happy to monitor the chat for you,
Susan.
Susan.
Thank you. And run my slides. If I don't have to deal with the tech, I can be much more present. That's definitely not one of my strength areas. So what is self-care? We're going to start with talking about self-care. And you all were given a self-care assessment worksheet. And so this is something that you can continue to use, just looking at the different types of self-care, where you were at today, August 3rd, and then 3 months later, maybe before you do the post survey that Beth mentioned, do your worksheet again and just see if anything has changed and where you might need to shore up practices in different areas of your life. We are going to start with a poll to get y'all engaged. Leah is going to put kind of just a question about what is the first thing, your gut response to when you hear the word self-care. So go ahead and just click on your answer. Yes. So I'm glad nobody put annoyed or a shallow term. Probably those people ended up not wanting to come to this, but you all did. But that was something that colleagues of mine, we hear self-care so often. It can sometimes be an empty term, or the work can get so heavy. It's like the breath work that I do or the walk that I take doesn't really help some of the stress and issues that are structurally and systemically happening. But it seems like the majority of us here, it's good to do. We know it's good to do when I can get to it. So finding the time and dealing with some of those barriers is really sort of what it's going to take to be able to sustain it. And so many, about a third of us, realizing it's central to sustain our work. And just to share a little bit about why this topic is really near and dear to me is that I've been in community mental health for 20 years and actually, my body has told me when I am depleted, I've gotten really sick. And that was when I really knew in order to stay in community mental health, self-care had to be a part of my everyday life. Okay, thank you, Leah.
Such an interesting comment, Susan. Someone wrote that sometimes it becomes used in an almost punitive way, putting the responsibility on individuals when systems also need to be changed to support individuals. So
yes, it's definitely a both and. We need to do both that work within ourselves and both that work in advocacy and shifting systems to make the work more sustainable. Thank you for the person who shared. Okay, so Gentry in 2002 defined self-care as the ability to refill and refuel ourselves in healthy ways. And I think self-care does have this sort of, it's self-indulgent, I'm selfish if I think of myself. All of us are caregivers and healers in this room. So we come to this work with a good skill in helping others, serving others, taking care of others. But sometimes doing that for ourselves can be harder. So just wanting to, really share that self-care is a practice. It takes discipline. It's something that you work at. And there's 3 components of self-care. The first one is caring for self. And that's really about incorporating healthy ways of living, looking at, your sleep, your diet, your exercise. It's also about maintaining relationships, your family. I know we're all balancing work and life and parenting, maybe even caring for our elderly parents as well. And then understanding boundaries and being able to say no when we need to and kind of not take on, everything and everyone's needs, and just retaining that balance and knowing when balance is off, and then shifting some things. Nurturing oneself is another part of self-care, and that's really treating yourself kindly, doing the things that recharge you, and finding what it is that does that for you. Sitting practice might not be for everyone, and there's different things like the arts or music, gardening. So finding what refuels and recharges you. And hopefully today you might spend some time thinking about that or have some resources to build that. And then the third part, really important, is coping with painful emotions, and just cultivating this gentle recognition and willingness to make contact with whatever's there, the pain, the trauma of others that we might be exposed to, our own traumas, the tension that we carry. We've all been sheltering in place with the COVID pandemic and may have lost loved ones, and just all of that, just being with everything and anything that comes up, and allowing those emotions to come and go without resisting or avoiding them. And that takes practice. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is a wheel of self-care. This represents all of the different areas that are possible within self-care. They were all on the self-care assessment worksheet: physical self-care, and that's safe housing, access to medical care, the eating, sleeping, doing the things that help our physical bodies. And screen time is a big thing that affects sleep, our own stress levels, and how much information we're taking in. So being aware of that. Psychological self-care is about time to reflect, going to our own therapy, drawing, painting, writing in a journal, relaxing, gardening, I think would be there. And then asking for and receiving help. I think as caregivers and helpers, we're really good at helping others, but receiving might be a little bit more challenging. Emotional self-care, crying, laughing, finding a hobby, saying I love you, being in connection to those who matter to us, practicing forgiveness of self and others, and then engaging in social justice. Also can be ways to support our emotional beings. Spiritual, singing, nature, meditating, praying, being in community with others is also a really important part of self-care that I think may not always get as much attention as the physical, emotional aspects. And then personal, this is where you find your thing that fuels you. For me, it's been yoga. If I didn't have yoga in my life, I definitely could not have survived parenting and this pandemic, and working in community mental health. So all the things, that you do to recharge for you. And that can be setting some goals, and creating good boundaries to do the things that you really need to do to take care of yourself. And then the professional realm, I think this is a place that I think a big reason why we're all here. Our jobs are stressful. Systems aren't always set up to be sustainable. So setting boundaries, taking time for lunch and not multitasking, leaving work at work, leaving at a certain time, not having your work email as part of your personal email, getting support from colleagues. So, and not holding the work alone. I think that's the most important part of self-care in a work setting is being able to sort of share the burden, seeking supervision, seeking consultation when you need it, and having a regular space to do that. And then trainings and things that help you feel like you're growing, and then being able to say no. Feel free to put in comments. I saw someone else mention 12-step, and anything else you want to put that might not be on this wheel that you're doing for your own self-care. Love to hear about that. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So what is mindfulness? Jon Kabat-Zinn defined it as a way of living in the present and being aware of our current surroundings. So mindfulness means maintaining a moment by moment awareness of our thoughts, our emotions, bodily sensations, and our surrounding environment with openness and curiosity. Mindfulness can be thought of as both a trait or a state of being or a practice. So today we're mostly focusing on the practices. So a moment of mindfulness is a state, and you can also have this sort of sustained being present, being centered, and that's more like a trait or a habit and way of being. Or you can engage in a more intentional practice of mindfulness, a sitting practice. And knowing that mindfulness doesn't have to be just sitting on a cushion still. You can practice mindfulness laying down, walking, and just in everyday life. And so part of what we're hoping to spend some time thinking about is how do we bring mindfulness off of the cushion and sitting, into life, into daily life, and into our work and into our relationships. And a common misconception of mindfulness is a need to empty the mind or to be in a calm, serene, sort of empty state. And some people might do meditation for the very purpose to get there. And unfortunately, that's not how our minds work. They're constantly busy, and it's normal to find that there's chaos, in the mind. And this is what our minds do. And shifting our perspective to being annoyed by that, or what's wrong with me? Why can't I slow my mind down? Why can't I just focus on my breath? Is to just bring curiosity to the thoughts and things that are coming, and accepting that this is what our minds do, and practicing being with that. Curious if there's any thoughts that people want to share in their mindfulness practices, and kind of how it's been, and what you've noticed, what's been a struggle, and if things have shifted. Just sharing if anybody would like.
This is.
I could.
Oh, go ahead, please. Go ahead, Jeffrey. Sorry.
No, I was just thinking you'd mentioned so much chaos in the mind, and I guess it's different for every individual, and trying to find some serenity and peace of mind with all the chaos that's going on, and a lot of it, most of it, is just totally unavoidable. So that's basically why I'm here, actually, to find out how to practice mindfulness and serenity, and a little peace of mind, and amongst all the chaos.
Yeah. Thank you, Jeffrey. And so it's the practice of just being with sort of the chatter in the mind, and then the moment that you're noticing, that's where your mind is. Because when you're in your mind, you're not in the present, you're in the past or you're in the future. And so bringing yourself back to the present over and over again, eventually over time can bring some of that serenity and peace. And we're going to practice next and just see how that goes. We'll check in and what are our minds like right now, today, in this moment. Next slide. Okay. So this will be a 5-minute breath practice. So this is the point you're totally welcome to turn off your cameras, to move away from the screen, to find a comfortable place where you can sit, in a chair or on the floor. So take a few moments to get comfortable. Turn off your cameras. Get the support you need to be able to sit for 5 minutes or stand if that's more comfortable for you. And when you're ready, allow yourself to settle in. You can let your eyes close if that feels natural, but it's not necessary. You can just soften your gaze sort of somewhere, on your body or on a focal point in front of you. And just try not to just wander your eyes around. Just kind of bringing your focus inside. And let's take a couple of just cleansing breaths, breathing in through the nose and letting it out through the mouth. Just a couple times in through the nose and out through the mouth. And then feeling your feet making contact with the ground, your sitting bones if you're sitting. And then we'll start and end this practice with the sound of the bell. Taking a moment to check in to see what's here now. How are you today? How are you doing physically, mentally, and emotionally? Perhaps this is the first time you've paused in a while this morning. So just acknowledging whatever is here for you right now. And sensing into the points of contact with the body in the chair or on the floor. And acknowledging any thoughts, sensations, or feelings that are arising right now. Beginning now to become aware of the sensation of breathing and focusing on the breath wherever it's most prominent for you. Perhaps the breath feels most distinct in your belly, your chest, or at the tip of your nostrils, feeling the cool air, the breath going in, and a little bit of a warmer breath as you breathe out. You don't have to breathe in any type of way. Simply noticing breathing, one inhalation and one exhalation at a time. Noticing your body breathing in and noticing your body breathing out. And if you notice while doing this practice, the mind has wandered to something other than your breath, some other planning or thinking of the past, simply notice that this has happened and bring your attention back to your breath and to the sensations of your body breathing in and your body breathing out. The moment that you become aware that you are not present with your breath is a moment of mindfulness. Each time the mind wanders, beginning again, bringing your attention back, sensing into the inhalation and the exhalation. If it's difficult to keep your attention on your breath, you're welcome to ground your attention to sounds, to your feet firmly on the ground, or your hands resting on your body. Finding an anchor point that works best for you. The breath may be noticed at any given time and is available as a resource for grounding, gathering attention, and coming back to the present moment. Your breath is always here now. Now we can withdraw the awareness from breathing and check in again with how your body, mind, and spirit are doing today. Sensing into how you're doing after taking a few moments to pause. Allowing yourself to be just as you are and taking a moment to acknowledge yourself for doing this practice. And bringing your attention back to your body, and your awareness back into space in your room, and the space that we're sharing here in the Zoom room, and returning your attention, coming back together. Taking any movements, any stretching you might need. And if you're willing, to please type in the chat what you noticed or learn from being with your breath for these 5 minutes. What stood out to you?
Some great comments.
Your to-do list. Work. You're all taking a break from work to be here, but work is waiting. Some busy minds. But you noticed that, how many thoughts you had and how challenging it was to just bringing focus on the breath or keeping focus on the breath. Jacqueline noticed her breath slowed down. It's a faster pace and it went down to 13 breaths per minute. Glenda noticed the tiredness. Yes, when we stop to pause, we sometimes really feel how tired we are. Yeah, and how important sleep is. And Amber saying that that pause was really, really needed. How fast-paced our lives are, how much we're keeping track of. Giving ourselves permission, as Alma is saying, let those thoughts come, let them go. We don't need to follow them. We don't need to act on them. And that brought her a little bit of peace. Would anyone like to unmute and share? You're welcome to do that as well. Yes, people talking outside your door, knowing that work is right there. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. This is challenging. This is not easy. And it takes practice. Yeah. And that we can always begin again with coming back to the breath. can go to the next slide on the roots of mindfulness. Okay, so mindfulness, I want to really talk about where it came from. It's a spiritual tradition rising from Buddhism in India and Tibet that's over 2,500 years old. Mindfulness has changed when it's come to the US, and there's a difference between the way Buddhists and conceptualize it and Western practitioners, non-secular adaptations of mindfulness. In the context of Buddhism, it's an introspective practice of reflecting and contemplating Buddhist teachings of impermanence, of non-self and suffering. In Western conceptualizations, it's more, mindfulness is more a form of awareness that encompasses all forms of objects in one's internal and external experience, including sight, sound, smells, all of our senses. And there's the integration of mindfulness into Western medicine. Psychology can be traced back to the 1950s and 60s when Zen Buddhism came to America. And Jon Kabat-Zinn was really instrumental in establishing mindfulness-based stress reduction, doing research on MBSR, and studies have shown MBSR benefits people with chronic pain, stress, anxiety, and depression. There's also a growing research base in the field of neuroscience that shows functional brain changes and brain images that people who engage in mindfulness and meditation, it actually changes their brains. MBSR helps people learn new ways of relating to stress while cultivating kindness and self-compassion. It's an 8-week course, and it provides a framework to support people to connect more fully to themselves. It's a group format, so you're connecting to others who are also learning the practice and how to bring mindfulness into your daily life. So it's something that I'll provide resources on if people are interested. And it really does take, I think, to develop any new habit, sort of daily practice, and about, I've heard different things, 6 weeks to form a new habit. So having this kind of structure, being in a class with others, and just, committing to showing up at some regular time can be really helpful in supporting to build an ongoing practice. I don't know, Beth, if you want to speak a little bit to building your practice, maybe at this juncture, and what was helpful for you?
Sure. I thought for years that sitting, stopping for just doing nothing was going to be something I couldn't do. So probably about 10 years ago or so, I hit a wall and decided that I needed to find a way to introduce something into my life that was calming. And I found a Sangha, which is, a Sangha is just like a group of people that meditate together in Alameda, and found it's so helpful to learn by sitting with other people. It helped me so much. I think for me, I'm sort of I appreciate the philosophy, and hearing the information from Buddhist teachings is also really, really helpful. And it just goes incremental, where I think I started with 5 minutes and gradually went up and had a practice for a long time, for about 3 minutes a day, maybe not every day, but quite often. And it helps so much. Even just the other day, I could feel myself feeling stressed, and I actually took my blood pressure and it was high. So then I went and sat and took my blood pressure again, and it was low. And I just thought, oh man. So I sort of fell off my practice for a while, but now I'm back. And Susan, appreciates so much all of the resources that you put in, that we'll be sending to people about places they can go. It's basically a philosophy, and you can hear about some of the philosophies that have arisen out of the traditions. So I find it really helpful. So I attend a Sangha in Alameda, and then also a Sangha in Richard Shankman, who is one of the founders of the Mindfulness in Schools work. So thank you for letting me share that.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you, Leah, for putting the resource link into the chat, and you will all have access to that. And we'll go over that in more detail at the end. And I'll just share a little bit about my mindfulness practice, because I'm not someone that likes to sit still. I'm not somebody that wants to kind of just stop. And so I practice yoga, which is more of a body movement practice, moving with body and breath. And yoga was a form to open the body to be able to sit in meditation. But whenever we would meditate, I'd be like, when is this over? And it took actually signing up for a Mindful Foundations class through Mindful Schools, which was a 6-week class, and starting, as Beth said, with 5 minutes and then building up to longer sits slowly at a time, and in community, that I was finally able to incorporate meditation as a practice that I could find benefit and, just a little bit of quieting of the mind, or noticing how busy my mind was and how I felt before I went to sit and how I felt after. Beth said her blood pressure went down. Someone said their breath slowed down. And so it really is, in a short time, can make a big impact. I think there was a question from Seda. Oh, the certificate. That comes later, right, Beth?
Yeah, they'll get you their certificate after they complete their evaluation. Then they will be able to print out their certificate afterwards, and we'll email the evaluation.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So foundations of mindfulness. The first practice we did was the first foundation, awareness of breath and body. The breath is ever present and always changing. You can't breathe in the past and you can't breathe in the future. And your breath is kind of a messenger or a friend that sort of gives you a sense of how you're doing. And so you can bring this awareness and notice your breath to know kind of, if you need a pause. And then a second foundation of mindfulness is awareness of the heart and feelings, opening to unacknowledged sorrow, our wounds, our pain, feelings of unworthiness, doubt, grief, and fear. All of those things might be things that come up when we pause and slow down. And then awareness of the mind and thoughts. I think Jeffrey stated, we don't have control. The brain is just going to go, thoughts appear out of our control. Jack Kornfield, who is a longtime practitioner at Spirit Rock and someone I've practiced with, says we swim in an uninvited constant stream of memories, plans, expectations, judgments, and regrets. It's really hard to just be here. We're always sort of either regretting the past or planning for the future, or judging and sort of, it's really easy to wish we did something different or to want something to be different, but those are all things that take us out of the present moment. And then the fourth foundation of mindfulness that Beth spoke to about sitting and practicing with others is this awareness and connections that we are all interdependent. We're all connected to one another, and our practice does have a ripple effect, not just to our families and our work, but to the broader society. Mindfulness is not a passive and disconnected from the pains and troubles of the world. It's an engaged practice empowering us to respond kind of from that deep well of our own inner resource and understanding and our values to our own pain and to the pain of others. Go to the next slide. I'm going to need my glasses for this So research on mindfulness, there have been several studies that are really looking at the impact and benefits of mindfulness. Over the last 40 years, research have found that mindfulness brings about various positive psychological effects, mindfulness interventions, such as the sitting practice we did, walking practice, mindful eating, self-compassion, all of those have a positive impact on psychological health, can reduce psychological symptoms, can increase just the feeling of well-being. Also, and what I find in my practice, lessening emotional reactivity. So instead of being really reactive, I can come from a place of more of responding, and improved behavioral regulation. John Kabat-Zinn, the founder of MBSR, demonstrated that practicing mindfulness is a key element in stress reduction and can bring positive changes in health, attitudes, and behaviors. Right. Any questions, comments on the research? Can go to the next slide to talk about benefits of mindfulness. So these studies have actually shown that there's a reduction in blood pressure. MBSR participants feel a reduction in chronic pain, improvement in sleep, alleviation of gastrointestinal symptoms, and definitely benefits for our mental health to have an effect on recovering from depression, anxiety, can bring us better focus and attention, and decrease kind of just being caught up in that spiral of our thoughts and ruminating, and also, as I talked about, that emotional reactivity. So if we can increase our ability to focus our attention kind of on what's here and now and accept it without judgment, this can lead to just having a little more space in which to respond rather than react. And that can give us sort of more ability to have choices in how we want to respond, and also to respond more from our values versus just reacting and responding from sort of an emotionally driven place. And as we learn to tune into how our inner world relates to the ever-changing currents, shifts, uncertainty that are just part of human life, we learn to recognize and release sort of our conditioned habits, patterns, reactions, and then we can come to this place of gratitude and seeing what's here and what's right here, right now. The Chinese translation for mindfulness is presence of the heart. And the core of mindfulness is this heart-centered practice. And it's realizing our whole being. Tara Brach, who coined the term radical acceptance, talks about, giving yourself a hug and then giving your evil twin a hug. Like both of us, we all have those different parts of us that both need love and acceptance. And then realizing our interdependence and how we rely on each other. Okay. Next slide. Okay, we're going to move into our second practice. So again, you're welcome to turn off your screen. We're going to do a self-compassion practice. And basically, compassion is the ability we all have to show empathy, love, and concern to those who are experiencing suffering and pain. And then self-compassion is about offering that same compassion, love, and empathy back towards ourselves. So it's not, self-compassion is not self-indulgent, it's not selfish. It's just a way of bringing that kindness to ourselves. Okay, so we'll try this practice together. Finding again a comfortable and supportive either sitting position, or if you want to decide to walk with this one, that's fine too. And in walking meditations, often you just pick maybe like a 6-foot distance that you just walk, kind of picking up your feet, putting it down, and then you get to the end, and then you go back. So it's a very small space, just like walking back and forth, feeling, the lift of your foot, and then placing it down, and just being really mindful and staying in your body as you're doing the practice, if you're choosing to walk. Okay. Right. And we'll start again with the sound of the bell at the beginning and end of the practice. So allowing yourself to settle in. Letting the eyes close if that feels natural, or softening your gaze. Sensing into the points of contact with the body and the chair, or on the floor, or your feet walking in whatever space you've chosen. So when we practice self-compassion, we bring to mind a situation or a problem in your life that's causing you some stress right now. And some good candidates for this is not the biggest stress, like the 10-pound, 100-pound weight of the biggest problem, but something mild to moderate, maybe like a 5, maybe a 3-pound weight if this is your first time. Something causing you some uneasiness, some stress, but not overwhelming you. And allow yourself to feel your way into that problem, situation. Experiencing what it feels like in your body to feel that problem, and having it play out on a movie screen in front of you. Now come back into your body and notice where you feel the discomfort is in your body, where that uneasiness lives, or where you might be feeling that bit of stress. And letting it be just as it is. And the first component of self-compassion is mindfulness and being with what's here. So begin to say to yourself slowly and kindly, this is a moment of stress. Or this is a moment of suffering. This hurts. Finding words that capture for you this difficult feeling and situation. Name it, validate it with any words that are right for you. And this next part of self-compassion is where we connect to common humanity. It's having the insight that struggle and stress are a part of living, and remembering that you are not alone. So saying to yourself, suffering is a part of life. Others would struggle in this situation too. I am not alone. Now, if it feels natural or supportive to you to place a hand on your heart and your other hand on top and sense into your heart, go ahead and do that now. Or finding any place to rest your hands that would bring kindness or comfort to you. Resting your hands on your face or your belly, cupping your hands in your lap, whatever would feel supportive to you. And then the third part of self-compassion is self-kindness. So say to yourself, may I be kind to myself. May I support myself in this moment of stress. You can also say, may I accept myself as I am. Choosing words that let your heart rest just a little bit when you hear them. Maybe that space behind your heart opens up a little bit. And if you're having difficulty coming up with words, imagine a friend, someone dear to you that you care for, is having the exact same problem and is struggling in the same way. What would you say to them to connect your heart to theirs? What message would you deliver to your friend? Maybe you'd say, I'm here for you. I care about you. I understand this is hard. You can do it. I believe in you. Now, can you offer the same message to yourself? The same words, the same phrases, treating yourself the same way you would a good friend who's struggling. And you can repeat these three parts of self-compassion. The first part, acknowledging the difficult feelings and the stressful situation by saying, this is a moment of stress. This is hard. And then second, notice the part of being human and saying to yourself, I am not alone. And then with soothing touch, offer kindness, saying what you'd say to a close friend. May I be kind to myself. May I support myself. May I have empathy. I'm here for you. This is hard. You can do it. I believe in you. And then taking a moment to come back to your breath, letting the words fall away, resting and just being here now. Nothing to change or be different. Allowing however you are for just this moment to be good enough. And just staying quiet and still till you can no longer hear the sound of the bell. And then bringing your awareness back into your breath and your body. Returning into this space. Taking a moment to check in on what is here now. And if you're willing to put in the chat a word or two about how you're feeling right now and what you noticed about that self-compassion practice. So the essence of self-compassion is really giving yourself permission to have even just a little of what you need right now. And sometimes we need to pause for a moment to check in with ourselves to figure out what that is.
So interesting how people are saying that more of it's a difficult time extending compassion to themselves.
And mine may have wandered more because this is a harder practice. Mm-hmm. So self-compassion is just that, a practice to start treating ourselves the same way that we might and a good friend, and talking to ourselves. Would we ever tell a friend, or judge a friend or be critical, but we're so easy to do that to ourselves.
Someone said we need to follow our own advice. I like that.
Definitely.
It's also interesting, someone said that they were able to find some distinct words to describe what they're experiencing. Slowing down and really focusing in on what you're feeling can be such a helpful thing, because there can be feelings underneath a feeling.
And it sounds like someone, the frustration came and then they were questioning about the choices they made. And that's really, really common. And so I'm curious, what if you had a friend that felt like they made a wrong choice, or they really didn't act in their best way, highest self, what would you tell them? What are words that we would say to anyone we love that just felt they made a wrong choice? I'd love to put some ideas that people can use in what they might tell themselves. It's easier to think about a friend first. You made the decision with the information you had at the time. You did the best you could. This is interesting. Someone shared that if we're nice to ourselves, we're being conceited, or we're like being too self-focused or bragging. So those are like messages and strong kind of learnings that we have that are really hard to undo. And so moving gently and just starting with finding words for a friend, and something that for you, even saying it's okay, any words that, you know, can start creating a different relationship, that self-compassion isn't being conceited. And so I want to ask you all, do we feel that if we do something wrong, it's helpful to get mad? Like if you think of a little child, or a lot of times with mindfulness, Jack Kornfield relates it to like a puppy that's like learning to sit, and our minds like just won't sit still like this puppy. And if the puppy gets up, you know, we don't hit it, we don't yell at it, you know, we're just like sit back down with kindness and with this like attitude of just teaching and patience. And so that's what we're trying to cultivate to ourselves. And so if you're new to self-compassion, you're going to get those, you know, automatic responses to selfish, I shouldn't, you know, take time for myself, or I'm being indulgent. And it just imagine the puppy and trying to treat yourself with kindness, that this is hard. And we're so used to, as Dominique is sharing, putting others first. So it's hard. I just want to acknowledge that. And you're not alone. Most of the comments are like, this is hard. So thank you everyone for sharing. And you're in the field and doing the work, you are, because you're good at, you know, supporting others, meeting the needs of others. And to sustain yourself, you also have to fill your cup. We can't pour from an empty cup. You all probably know the put your own oxygen mask first. And this practice is a way of putting your mask on first, so that you can be able to continue to care for others. And research, there's a recent study on self-compassion in 2019, that self-compassion fosters authenticity, accepting who we are, not who we feel that we should be, or who we're supposed to be, or who others want us to be. And letting, sort of connecting to our core values. And that's what energizes us. That's probably why we came into the work. So it's a practice to revisit what really matters, and how we sustain ourselves. There's a couple more comments that came in. Oh, good. It's not me first. It's me too.
Isn't that great?
I love that. I love that. We're all in this together. If I make myself stronger, I can support others. I'm going to write that down. Thank you so much. I love it. Yeah, and someone spoke about forgiving themselves, and being able to set limits, and how helpful that is. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And so taking this moment of self-compassion, asking ourselves, like, what do we need, can help us figure out what boundaries we need to set, what's, you know, what's depleting us, and then taking some, making some choice or decision on what to do next.
Yeah, I feel like it's a hard thing to do, to suddenly say to yourself, okay, now I'm going to put myself in a place of priority and compassion, but because you don't need another, well, you weren't compassionate to yourself today. You know, that's not helpful. So it's like, what's the incremental step I can take toward being more compassionate, because I think all of us here in this room really have problems with that. So
Yeah.
taking an incremental steps towards saying no when you're full, or getting quiet and just giving yourself some compassion. I like that idea of incrementality.
Totally. Just the smallest step, just one breath. Somebody in the survey had talked about, what do I do in a work situation to bring mindfulness when either I'm in overwhelm or the family I'm supporting is in overwhelm? What do I do? And so one thing is breathing in for me, breathing out for you, in for me, out for you. And you're just, compassion for you, compassion for them, using your breath is one practice that could be helpful. Someone shared that it can bring up guilt. If I take care of myself, then I'm not taking care of others. I have privilege. Others are struggling and multi-stressed. It's wrong. And it's somehow taking away from them if I give to myself. And so it does, like what Beth said, just in small ways, learning over time. If I care for myself, I'm more present for others. And I can tell you that, but you won't believe it until you actually experience it. And so continue, if you want, to practice this and see if that might shift for you. And what are the smallest ways that you can just start on this journey? Okay, great. Increases the container to provide for others, definitely. Okay. You can go to the next slide. Thank you, everybody, for putting your comments in the chat. So, yeah, this is just sort of more benefits of mindfulness, that wherever you are, be all there, being attuned to what's happening in the present moment in the body. It becomes a vehicle of gaining insight into what's happening in the present moment. With ongoing practice, this fosters the capacity for this awareness to come into everyday life. I really notice the days I don't have a chance to meditate all day long. I'm sort of just on automatic pilot, going. And the days I can start with a little bit of space, I am able to be more responsive versus reactive. And it really shifts. We are all a doing culture. If we're not being productive, something's wrong. And it's really difficult to shift from doing to being. We're not human doings, we're human beings, but I don't think we really practice on being as much as we do, just like the to-do list came up for somebody, just like the certificate, all these things that just have to be done and checked off. But how do we shift and slow down? Because being in constant doing creates a lot of cortisol and a lot of stress. And slowing down and being can help really slow the stress response, calm your nervous system, and develop new neural pathways of resilience, equanimity, and compassion. And so this doesn't happen overnight. I think, Jeffrey, you were saying, like, how do you do this? It's this constant practice to shift, being with, and slowing down. And we all know when our nervous systems go into fight or flight, like Beth was saying, my blood pressure, and that is the moment your body's telling you, slow down and take a couple breaths, do a practice. We're going to share a bunch of apps that you can use. And it can be even 3 breaths can help just slow you down. And then this part about joy coming from being able to begin again if you felt you made a wrong choice, just like your breath is always there. You lose track of it, you can begin again. So, bringing this practice and applying it to life, that all that's needed is to begin again. And so mindfulness doesn't have to be this separate, isolated part of your day. Like some people like to have a sitting practice and do that. Others, it's bringing this way of paying attention into everyday interactions, the here and now. That's also mindfulness. That's also practicing. Rick Hansen is a neuropsychologist. He wrote The Buddha's Brain. He does a lot of trainings. I was in a training with him at Spirit Rock, and somebody asked, how long do I have to do this? Like, we all want to know how many minutes, how often, till I feel a benefit. Please tell me, you know, and I'll just do that. And he said, even 1 minute is infinitely better than none. So I hope that you take that as, you know, even 1 minute, even one breath is better than none. So no pressure to become this, you know, meditator that can sit for, you know, 30 minutes, an hour. Yeah, just bringing it into your life every day. You can bring mindfulness. There's some practices on the resource page: mindful walking, mindful eating, and being totally and fully with all your senses in whatever you're doing right now. All right. So just go to the next slide. So this is a Tibetan monk named Ajahn Chah. He was an influential teacher of the Buddha Dharma and a founder of 2 major monasteries in the Thai forest tradition. He's respected and loved as a man of great wisdom, and he also established and brought Theravada Buddhism into the West. And so Spirit Rock Meditation Center, which is on the Resource Center, it's located in Woodland in Marin County, is founded in this tradition. And this is his quote: "If you let go a little, you will have a little happiness. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of happiness. If you let go completely, you will be free." And we can just start with a little bit. Okay. I wanted to go to the resource page. I don't know, Leah or Beth, can we share what's on that resource page? Great, thank you. So you will all have access to this resource page. I just want to show you what's on there, what's compiled. And it's definitely not an exhaustive list. I don't know where all of you are coming from. It's mostly focused in Alameda County. So we have the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. Kristen Neff and Christopher Germer, they have formed this center, and there are free self-compassion online practices. They're at 5 a.m., 7 a.m., and 4 p.m. every single day. That's the link to be able to sign up. And once you have the Zoom link, you can go on anytime you want. I went on this morning to kind of center myself for this training. There were 93 people from all over the world. One of the trained mindful self-compassion teachers led us in a sitting practice and read a beautiful poem at the end. So that's something you can expect. It's about 30 to 45 minutes. East Bay Meditation Center also is a great place to start a mindfulness practice. They have sittings, many are online. They also serve BIPOC folks and are a good resource if you want to start a practice.
LGBTQ folks.
Yes, yes, specific affinity groups. Both of those organizations have that. Insight Meditation Center in Berkeley is another one. Mindful SF is the group practice I'm part of. We offer a Refuel Fridays, donation-based or completely free 45-minute mindfulness practice you can share with others, you can use yourself. And in the fall, I'll be leading some of those. I'm not doing that right now. And I'm also going through my own training starting this fall to be a MBSR teacher. And I'm hoping I'll be able to offer that to communities of color and folks that don't have access in the future once I'm trained. Spirit Rock Meditation Center is also listed there. They have online and they started in person, retreats, trainings, yoga, mindfulness, self-compassion. and really great teachers. Alameda Sangha is the place that Beth mentioned, where she's practicing. I believe they have a Sunday night meditation.
Yeah, it's Sunday night at 7 o'clock till 8:30. There's a half an hour sit, and then there's about a half an hour talk where you learn a little bit about what they call Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha. And then there's some wonderful conversation and thought, thinking
Community
together.
after.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay. And then Mindful Schools is where I started the foundations practice. It's meant for educators to maybe bring mindfulness in, but it's definitely great to start your own practice. And I recommend it. And you can get continuing education units if you are a teacher or a mental health provider. And then for yoga, there's Adeline Yoga in Berkeley, the Breathing Room here in Alameda, Firefly Yoga. A lot of these have specials for new students, and they have both online as well as in-person classes, at least for right now. Trauma sensitive yoga. This comes from Bessel van der Kolk's model of trauma. The body keeps the score. So Kelsey is somebody who teaches online and at the Berkeley Yoga Center. And she's one of the few people that are certified in bringing this trauma sensitive yoga and body-based healing to folks. And her classes require you being in therapy while being in yoga. So it's really a comprehensive model. And then the rest you can kind of go through on your own. I put yoga links. Yoga from Adrienne is something very popular. She has 8 million followers. And so she's free and accessible on YouTube. And then these are the apps that I mentioned. I use the Insight Timer. It has a choice of different bells. You can do just seated, silent meditation. You can type in meditation for sleep, meditation for stress, meditation for anxiety. You could put self-compassion. You could put, if you want, 1 minute to 30 minutes, however much, and it will sort it for you and give you a choice of different guided meditations. And then you can save those in your favorites and go back to them again and again and create your own library. And then this is something, these are all links. If you want to continue to practice different kinds of mindfulness, maybe the self-compassion is not your thing and the breath is not your thing, the walking, the body scan is a great way to release tension. The mindful eating, eating a raisin with all your senses is also a great practice, one that's great for kids and one that's great. People ask to bring these to parents. So you can look at these, practice them, and maybe do them in a group. Either with your coworkers or with your clients or people that you're serving, or getting a partner, a self-care partner at work, and doing a walking meditation together are all ideas to build your practice. Okay, thank you. I had kind of an ending poem I wanted to read, but Beth, do I have time if you need to go over the?
Yeah, well, it's 11:26.
It's not long.
So
okay.
Yeah, no,
It'll
go for it. I think that would be lovely.
Okay, so let's just spend this last minute again, coming back into your body. You can take a few breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. This poem is called Breathe Right Here in the Middle of It All. It's by an artist and musician named Morgan Harper Nichols. Breathe right here in the middle of it all. Breathe right here before it all makes sense. There is a lot you can't control, and this is also true. The wisdom you are gathering from what you can do is gracefully strengthening you. You are further along than you think. You are not who you used to be, and that is a beautiful thing. You are redefining what it means to give your all. You are cultivating new rhythms of rest. You are learning to love deeply You are learning to love fully. You are learning, you are letting fiery goodness fill your bones. You are learning to let go of age-old fears. You are learning to worry less about who you need to impress. You are letting love challenge old ways of thinking. You are doing the work, and it matters. All right, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here
Thank you.
today.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. You'll be getting the evaluation in your email. So we really appreciate you completing that for us. And remember the 3-month evaluation and see if maybe you'll be able to sit for a few times between now and then and start to develop some self-care practices. So Susan, thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing all of your resources and your just who you are. Sharing your with us is so wonderful. Thank you.